Some of the greatest horror movies of all time have originated from Japan, so much so a bunch of them have lazily later been given English language remakes to earn a quick buck, some good, some not so good. And while we all know about The Rings, The Grudges, The Dark Waters and The Pulses, there are so many other great Japanese horrors that often fly a little under the radar, and that's what we're here for today. So with that in mind, I'm Andrew from What Culture Horror, and here are 10 terrifying Japanese horror movies you've probably never seen. Number 10. Over Your Dead Body. Takashi Miike is the infamous director behind the likes of Ichi the Killer, Audition and Imprint, but one of his movies that often gets overlooked is Over Your Dead Body. Set in a rehearsal room for a ghost story play about love, betrayal and revenge, our central character is Miyoko Goto, who uses politics to get her lover a key part in this play, leading to tensions between the cast and crew as the line between fiction and reality begins to blur in a supernatural way. Unique in how it essentially has two narratives simultaneously being told, Over Your Dead Body is incredibly ambitious, aesthetically stunning, and its slow pace and eerie atmosphere lead to some fantastic scares. Number 9. Scarecrow. An adaptation of a Junji Ito manga, Scarecrow might not be flawless, but it has some wildly imaginative horror scenarios and absolutely nails the eventual payoff. Here we follow Kaoru, a woman who travels to an isolated village to search for her missing brother. However, while there, she discovers that this creepy place has some incredibly dark and malicious secrets. Scarecrow nicely takes its time with its setup and its reveals, luring the audience into a false sense of security before throwing some great frights your way as it slowly delves more and more into the supernatural. Number 8. Reincarnation. Much like Over Your Dead Body, Reincarnation covers the tale of a young female actor who experiences supernatural horror after landing a big movie role. The main difference is that Reincarnation focuses on intense imagery and physically violent scares rather than taking the slower, more visually stunning approach. Nagisa is the actor in question here, brought onto a film depicting a grisly historical murder at a local hotel. But before the start of the shoot, Nagisa becomes haunted by the ghosts of the victims, who plague her with hallucinations that only grow worse, causing her sanity to dwindle as the shoot progresses. Reincarnation does get a smidge convoluted at times, but this actually serves as part of its charm, as the confusing narrative helps put you in the same sort of mental space as poor Nagisa. Number 7. Dead Sushi. Dead Sushi is certainly quite the trip, but that's to be expected when you realize this is a film from Noboru Iguchi, the same fella behind Zombie Ass Toilet of the Dead. Yes, that is a real thing. The focal point here is Keiko, the daughter of a great sushi chef who's struggling to match up to her old man's sushi making skills. Running away to start a new life as a hotel waitress, Keiko comes up against a threat that will push her skills to the test. That threat will be killer sushi. Played out almost like a trauma film, there's Evil Dead-esque point of view shots, ridiculous backstories, villains that look like they've been discarded from the old Power Rangers TV show, plenty of bizarre out loud thinking from Keiko, and even a sushi sex scene. Oh, and a disgusting ancient Japanese kiss that's best described as two people, one egg. Number 6. Evil Dead Trap. A Japanese slasher film, Evil Dead Trap certainly isn't for the faint-hearted, brimming with some truly gruesome effects. Here, TV host Nami makes the mistake of requesting home videos from her viewers, which leads to someone sending her a snuff film supposedly shot in a nearby factory. Putting together a film crew, she decides to investigate all of this, only for this group to be hunted down and murdered one by one in extremely brutal fashion by a strange figure that seems more monster than human. Evil Dead Trap smartly plays into the tropes of the slasher subgenre, while still providing an original viewing experience, with an incredibly creative concept behind the killer's identity. Number 5. Zoo. Who doesn't love a good horror anthology movie? George A. Romero and Stephen King's Creepshow is obviously the benchmark for these collections, but 2005 Zoo is an extremely decent anthology that's well worth hunting down. What makes Zoo different is it links its stories by emotion, with a running theme of pain and sadness throughout each segment, but each tale explores these themes in different ways. For example, one short story is a physically painful one about a mother of twins who adores one child but hates the other, whereas the final segment takes a more metaphorical and open to interpretation approach, with a CG animated tale about a man surviving an apocalypse and learning about life and death. While each story features fear, pain and sadness, they all bring things to life in completely different ways. Number 4. Spiral. No, not that Chris Rock Saw film. This Spiral once again features Junji Ito, with this 2000 film adapting Ito's magnum opus, Uzumaki. Admittedly not a perfect movie, Spiral does fantastically capture the pervasive dread of its source material, with the characters doomed to inescapable insanity as the story follows the residents of a small Japanese town who become increasingly obsessed with spirals, culminating in a big ol' amount of body horror, death and paranoia, as some characters even literally break from their bodies, while others are driven to madness. It's all a little absurd, but it all works so well thanks to the grim death scenes and twisted visuals, as a constant sense of dread hangs over the picture. Number 3. Creepy. Watching Creepy feels akin to hearing forks scraping across a plate, or my voice to some people, in that it's a uncomfortable and painful watch in the best possible way. Creepy follows the Takakuras as they move into a new home, with husband Koichi a former detective who ends up getting involved in a cold case, while his wife Yasuko attempts to strike up a relationship with their neighbours, only to become suspicious of the eccentric and seemingly dangerous Nishino. From there, Creepy becomes a thrill ride of twists and paranoia, with Teruyuki Kagawa particularly unsettling as Nishino, veering from slightly uncomfortable to outright evil. Domestic horror is a genre that never fails to make viewers nervous, and this movie takes full advantage of that setup, gradually making a scenario more intense and forcing you to question what secrets your neighbours could be hiding. Number 2. Horrors of Malformed Men. Horrors of Malformed Men is not your average movie. In fact, even the most eccentric of filmmakers would consider it a pretty wild ride. A compelling, strange tale that's widely seen as a precursor to the Toei company's overly sexed up, brutal, pinky violent exploitation films in the 1970s. You can imagine what awaits you with this movie based on that description. In Horrors of Malformed Men, we follow a young medical student who escapes from an insane asylum with zero recollection of why he was there or who he really is. Assuming the identity of a deceased man who appears to be his doppelganger, this fella ends up on a strange island populated by a mad scientist and his mutant creations. Horrors of Malformed Men is incredibly theatrical, with the acting, visuals and narrative all just a bit nuts. Granted, certain elements don't hold up too well these days, given that this is a film made in 1969, but it's nonetheless an experience that's well worth your time. Number 1. Kwaidan. Another horror anthology, but one vastly different to the previously mentioned Zoo. Rather than impatiently throw scares at you left, right and centre, Kwaidan builds its atmosphere slowly, keeping you constantly on edge across a 3-hour runtime that features just 4 stories, each that will stick with you A, due to the film's beauty, and B, due to the shock twist endings that flip everything on its head. First up, a swordsman abandons his wife to seek fortune, but returns home to a horrifying sight after he realises he's made a mistake. Then comes a haunting tale about a man encountering the terrifying Yukuwana, snow spirit, which is followed by the story of a blind musician who's lured into performing for some other nefarious spirits. And then Kwaidan concludes with a segment by a man haunted by a face in his tea, which is a lot more creepy than it may sound. To be blunt, Kwaidan is just an exceptional horror movie in every possible way, and it's no surprise that this was nominated for an Academy Award.